This is just going to be an audio post, so you can tab out of this. There's going to be no video component. So Essence Reaver is an item in League of Legends. It was recently reworked with the changes that came to ADC itemization, but it was reworked in a different direction, so to say, compared to other items, because before the rework, it was a crit item like Infinity Edge or any of the Zeal items, where it both gave you critical chance and it also gave you benefits from building more critical chance. And its current design is it got reworked completely to a different design entirely, almost kind of like a semi-reaver in itself. And I personally feel that this was a bad rework, and so I'm gonna go over why I think it's a bad rework and why I think it should be reverted to its crit version, which was pre-patch 7.11, I believe, or 8.11. It was pre-item ADC crit changes. So first off, I'm going to talk about why the current Essence Reaver design is bad or unhealthy. So the current Essence Reaver design it's a full item. It builds out of the BF Sword, Warhammer, and a Sapphire Crystal. It gives 70 attack damage, 20% CDR, and 300 mana, and it has a passive that refunds 1% of your missing mana on hit, and it has a unique passive called Essence Flare, where after you cast your ultimate, you gain 50% bonus attack speed. Basic attacks refund 20% of your remaining basic ability cooldowns for 6 seconds, and this has a 30-second cooldown. So why is this design bad? This is coming... I should preface this by saying this is coming from somebody who... I'm not going to claim that I'm an elite League player. I've been playing for long enough to understand concepts in League, like crit itemization. I'm plat, whatever. I just wanted to share my opinion. So first off, current Essence Reaver item design is very specific in its design. It has a specific gimmick, and its gimmick is champions that like to have mana, and champions that like to use abilities between autos after their ultimate. So the go-to example I'm going to use for Essence Reaver is Lucian, because Lucian is probably the king of Essence Reaver. When it was reworked, Lucian was one of the top ADCs to build it, and it was a very beneficial item to him. And even after the change, Lucian's probably one of the few champions that still makes use of it. Lucian likes to use abilities because he's a caster ADC. He's a caster bully ADC. He also likes to use his ultimate to begin fights. He can use it to end, but with this design specifically, he has to use it to end fights. Lucian benefits from the mana because he uses his abilities. He benefits from the CDR, and he benefits from the attack damage because he's an ADC that needs AD items. He benefits from the missing mana on hit, and he benefits from the unique Essence Flare passive, because he casts his ultimate and then he can use his abilities, namely his E, which is a dash, which has a very short cooldown already, because how it interacts with his passive, where his autos after every ability grant him 1 second less CDR on his E. So he basically likes spamming it, or well, not spamming, he likes using his ultimate with Essence Reaver and then spamming his abilities because he basically has infinite dashes with it. But he's pretty much one of the only champions that uses it in its current state. Sivir apparently actually built it because its design is just it's one-dimensional. It only benefits champs in a specific niche that really isn't seen a lot. Champions that could abuse it, like Jace or Udyr, that use their ultimates a lot, but also auto attack, they can't use it because Essence Flare has a cooldown, and their ultimates have very short cooldowns because of their champ designs. So Lucian and Sivir, I guess, are basically the only champs that can make use of it. Champions don't usually want ultimate abilities that also benefits both autoing and using abilities at the same time. And champions that do, like Tryndamere or Renekton, don't like the mana, so they don't build it. Point number 2, it doesn't synergize with any existing build path for any champions. There are a lot of like build paths, so to say, but they're more like, I guess specific roads would be a good comparison. ADC champions, specifically champions like Lucian, they like to build either pure AD, which is kind of varied, or they like to build crit, which is a very specific road where you take one Zeal item and then you take one crit item usually. And then you build mostly crit. You focus on building one benefit usually from these kind of roads. So bruisers, they like the base damage of Triforce. So their build path kind of tilts towards Triforce because it gives them everything they want. Crit ADCs that build crit go towards, I guess, IE and Zeal because it gives them what they want. It leads them. The road they take benefits them the most. It's the most optimal build path. Essence Reaver doesn't synergize with anything. Its mana ability doesn't synergize with any champions that use mana a lot, like Ezreal. He doesn't gain any benefit from it because he does not engage with his ultimate. He uses it as just kind of a poke or harass ability usually, or wave clear. Champions that would use their ultimate, let's say Lux or LeBlanc or Ahri, don't benefit because they don't want AD and they don't auto attack. So they're gone. Basically all of mid lane is gone. Melee champions don't really benefit from it. They could benefit from it, but they want to be kind of tanky, or they want just pure damage. Like Talon and Zed and Wukong, they all want pure damage because they want to burst you. They don't want a fight where they spam their abilities. They just want to kill you with one rotation. And again, Jace and Udyr, who would probably be two of the best users of it, just don't want it because they can't make use of it, because Essence Flare is basically useless on them unless they follow the cooldowns. There's no champion that benefits from it besides Lucian or Sivir. Even some champions that could benefit from it, like Misfortune, saw a bit of use of it before she got rid of it. Renekton, Master Yi, they all ditched it because they don't want the mana component. They just want damage because mana doesn't benefit them as much as it does Lucian. And then, okay, so my next point is C. Promotes an unhealthy state for whichever champion that uses it. If the champ can make use of its passive, and it's a good item to build on them, they are unbearably strong because of what it provides to them. If they can't, the item isn't worth building because it has a very specific niche. So this niche is obviously, you are most optimal after using your ult, and in that short time where you can spam your abilities while also auto-attacking. Lucian, Renekton, and Yi were like the top 3 users of it, and for the short time Renekton and Master Yi were the users of it. They saw a lot of play and they usually rushed it, but they stopped building it because it wasn't an optimal item for them. And Lucian is literally the only champion that uses it, but even he doesn't like rushing it. He rushes Blade of the Rune King or Black Cleaver now. And Black Cleaver is incredibly unoptimal on him just because it provides so much health, but it doesn't provide AD, which isn't good for a bully. It just kind of goes to show how little Essence Reaver has an impact on his build path, that he builds it second or third after Black Cleaver or Blade of the Rune King or what have you. If they can make use of it, they are unbearably strong. If they can't, the item just isn't worth building. So it's not one of those items where you go it if you want the benefits it provides, but it's just one of those items. Not everybody rushes it. It's not that kind of item anymore. It used to be with the crit change, which I'll get to. D, it's only built. I did this in a very barbaric fashion. I basically went on sites and looked at item builds that were most popular. The most popular were only Lucian and Sivir. No other champion that could build it or make use of it built it in more than 20% of games, which is insane because I guess, let's take a sample size of 100 games. If you see Lucian in 100 games, chances are he'll build that item because he has a 50% build rate on it. Sivir saw 40%, so every 40 out of 100 games you'd see a Sivir build it. Renekton and Master Yi, which were the 2 top users of it, besides Lucian, they don't build it more than 15% each. So in 50% of games you won't see a Master Yi, or in 50% of games you will see a Master Yi or Renekton build it, but otherwise they won't build it. They will build their usual build. And that's bad because it just shows that nobody's building it. Nobody's building it on any champions. They don't see it as optimal. They don't see it as even functional. They just don't build it because it's useless. And my last point for why it's unhealthy is that it's literally just pre-crit rework Essence Reaver, but the sustain is replaced with Essence Flare. And I only bring this up because they reworked it and people started building it again. Before the rework, nobody used it except occasionally on specifically Ezreal, I believe. Sometimes not even then, because pre-rework Essence Reaver, it just wasn't useful. Instead of having the Essence Flare passive, it had Lifesteal, which even then was like, there wasn't a specific gimmick built tacked onto it to make it this unique item. It was just an item that provided mana and mana on hit and AD, and that was it, and sustain in the old design. And it is literally just they ditched the sustain and they gave the Essence Flare passive, and that just kind of goes to show how useless it is. And it's actually kind of something important to mention, as I'll get into later. So now, why is the old Essence Reaver healthy enough to revert to? This is the pre-crit rework of 80 Champions, where it was changed into its current state. This is not the sustained version of this current Essence Reaver. This is the crit Essence Reaver. These are all parallel to the points I brought up before. Old Essence Reaver's item design fit the philosophy of current crit itemization, which is why I'm most confused why they changed it in the first place. The current focus of crit itemization is not to give ADCs a power spike, where before this they wouldn't be able to even do any damage to most champions, and after they just basically carried the game. They could carry any team fight. Current crit itemization focuses on encouraging ADCs to build crit because it gives them benefits beyond just pure damage, but it still gives them that pure damage of auto attacks doing 200% damage. So, for example, I believe it's Storm Razor. That's the new crit item that was introduced in that patch. Burst ADCs really like it because it gives them crit, and it gives them a crit function, because their first auto attack every few seconds is an automatic crit. It's a guaranteed crit, which is very useful for burst. So Twitch and Draven, champions that like to burst but build crit, benefit from it. It's kind of like a crit Duskblade in a sense. Duskblade isn't a good example because Duskblade is also an item that really needs to be changed, but that's another discussion. IE was changed because it was just the power spike for ADCs. If an ADC got a power spike with his IE, if they got IE and a Zeal item, they reached their power spike and suddenly they did way more damage than before because it just gave a flat bonus to crit damage. But now it fulfills its goal as a tank killer because now it does true damage with every crit. Crits do true damage to enemy champions, which means it's a lot more effective in its role as an anti-tank item, because it gives a way to build around tanks. And old ER, Crit ER, did that as well, because it was a very good item for caster ADCs, or champions that liked having CDR from crit. So Tristana built it, Misfortune built it, Lucian of course built it, Jhin, it was one of the core items on Crit Jhin. It was one of the Jhin had two build paths, which were crit or lethality, mid-game, do a lot of AD damage. That Jhin would build Yumu's or other lethality items. But Crit Jhin rushed Essence Reaver because it gave him CDR, but it also gave him benefits for building crit. Crit Ezreal would build it because it was the best item for him, obviously. And even right before the rework happened, and for a while, Trindamirs were building it. They were rushing it because they wanted the benefits it provided to them, and it provided benefits to them by providing CDR and providing crit, but also gaining benefit because you would gain CDR from your crit chance. So these champions all saw usage with it because it provided them something, but it also gave them stats worth building. And then and that's really important for ADCs because ADCs, or just carries in general, need something that they can build that gives them benefits that other champions don't want, or else other champions will build them and they will become overpowered items. Okay, so my next point is it was a core item on many champions, but it was flexible and not overbearing, like past IE or Korean ER, like I mentioned. It doesn't have a gimmick strapped onto it, and it doesn't have just this pure gold optimization sufficiency where everybody is going to build it if it sees any play. It was just a flexible item that ADCs that liked CDR could build. It was an item that champions that like CDR but also like building crit could build. It was a flexible item. It's not a core item anymore in the sense that a champion wants to build this item, and without this item they are being played suboptimal and they don't want to use it, which is what current ER is. There's really no reason to build it unless you're Lucian, and even then it doesn't provide enough benefits. But if it got buffed for some reason, and God forbid it gets buffed, because if it gets buffed, Master Yi and Renekton specifically will abuse it, then it would see a lot more play, because it's an item that's basically gimmicked. It's kind of shot in the foot by this current ER. And that's mostly what I think of Old Essence Reaver. Old Essence Reaver is an item that benefited ADCs but was more of an option than a build this or you're playing suboptimally for certain champion niches. So why revert their Essence Reaver update? This is the core of what I want to talk about. New Essence Reaver feels like a gimmick weapon. It feels like a gimmick item. It feels like, this is not a great example, but Old Banner. Old Banner of Command, before it got removed from the game, did one thing extremely well, which was allowed a champion to siege while also giving them take stance. So they could split and go to other lanes while their banner minion could siege. And it got to a point where they just couldn't balance it healthily, so they just removed it. And it's otherwise underwhelming. Banner never saw play until people started using it at all divisions, at all MMRs. People rushed it on Scion everywhere, basically. And because of that, it saw way too much play. It wasn't in a healthy state. They removed it outright because they couldn't balance around it. Current ER is this, but on a lesser level. It's in the state where nobody uses it except a very specific champion or two. Because it's underwhelming. It's suboptimal. Nobody wants to build it. But if it gets buffed, it's going to get abused, and it's not going to see as much widespread usage as Banner, because Banner was more of a catch-all weapon catch-all item, than a flexible item, not flexible, or it's more of a flexible item than a specific niche. But if it gets buffed, you can bet your sweet ass Essence Reaver is going to be abused, specifically on Master Yi, because of the way it interacts with his Q. But Old ER isn't a gimmick weapon. It was an item that gave options to ADCs, because if ADCs wanted cooldown reduction, they got it from Old ER. And it wasn't overwhelming. It just gave them an option. It was a very flexible item. ADCs like Jhin and Lucian specifically, who built Old ER, they had different flexible paths for what they wanted to do in that specific game. If they wanted to be tank killers, if they were against a lot of tanks, they would go crit, and ER was a core in the crit builds. And if they wanted to go full damage, they would build, for example, Yumu's into Duskblade or Cleaver and go full on frontal damage for mid game spikes. And that was healthy because it promoted item diversity. It allowed them to be more than just one specific role at one specific time. They weren't forced into one specific item build. And a new ER is just a gimmick weapon. Nobody wants to build it except on Lucian and Sivir. And Sivir is not a very good ADC right now, even then. It's still kind of suboptimal to build it on her, but it is rushed on Sivir, so I will give them that. I did not realize that because I don't see any Sivirs, but it is an item that is built on Sivir and Lucian, and only those two champions, whereas before it was built on almost any ADC that wanted CDR. It gave a power spike to champions like Tristana and Corki and Ezreal if they didn't build their tier build. And it was something that wasn't provided, and it wasn't provided before Crit ER, and now they don't have that option. And there are a lot of other reasons why they aren't played right now, but that's one of the big reasons, is that they don't have an item to go to anymore. They have to kind of branch out to these weird item builds. Corki isn't even an ADC, so that doesn't really matter, but it was still a core item on him. MF just goes full lethality or cleaver or full damage, doesn't build crit at all. It took away a lot of options for a lot of ADCs. And the biggest point I want to make for reverting the Essence Reaver update is Riot can and has reverted a lot of updates before. Items, complete champ reverts, they've done a lot recently, and it's not surprising because a lot of their reworks have been kind of flawed. Like champions like Rengar and LeBlanc have gotten full reverts. Champions like Kog'Maw have gotten full reverts, and to the best of my knowledge, this has never happened before. They never actually reverted full champions. But they also revert items. They've been flipping back and forth on Warmogs for a good time now, where they would... Its unique passive was that after 3,000 health, if you had more than that, you would have a passive where you gain health back. And before, for a short time, I'd say about a year, not even, they changed it from 3,000 to 2,750 because tanks were out of focus and nobody was building it. So they reworked it to a little bit to try and encourage tanks to build it now. And now it's back to 3,000. So they are obviously more than willing to revert changes, whether or not they outright say they're reverting changes. And I really think Essence Reaver, the update is just completely and inherently flawed. Its design is not promoting healthy gameplay for any champions that build it. There are no champions that see benefit from it that didn't see benefit from other items. Lucian specifically, the go-to example, because it's such a core item on him because of his ability spamming, auto attack spamming style. He's pretty much the only champion that uses it because he's the only champion that benefits from everything it gives. And again, even then, it's suboptimal. It's not a good item to build on him because people prefer building items like Cleaver or Blade of the Ruined King. And so that's basically all I wanted to talk about. I've recorded things like this before, and I haven't uploaded them because I was just kind of iffy on uploading them. But if people enjoyed this and were willing to have discussions about stuff like this, there are a lot of other items I'd love to talk about, a lot of champs I'd like to talk about. I'd be more than willing to record and upload them, so this is kind of a test run. But so thanks for listening, and see ya.